The red warning lights flashed across the control room walls. Veltar pressed his long fingers against the cold metal surface of the communication panel. His purple skin had turned pale from worry and lack of sleep. For 3 months, the same. Terrible message had been playing on repeat from the enemy ships above their planet. "Surrender now or face death," the voice said in the harsh language of the Vorthak Empire. "You have no hope. No one will come to save you." Veltar looked around the room at his people. The Kethani had always been peaceful. They built things. They grew food. They studied the stars. They had never learned to fight wars. Their long, thin arms were made for delicate work, not holding weapons. Their large eyes were meant for seeing beauty, not watching for enemies. "Administrator," said Quindal, a young engineer who still believed they might escape this nightmare. "The mining tunnels in Sector 7 are almost empty. If the Vorthak break through our shields, we could hide there for maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Veltar closed his eyes. They had been hoping for rescue for 93 days. 2 more weeks would not matter. The colony of Zalara Prime had been a dream come true for his people. Rich mineral deposits lay deep in the planet's crust. Clean water flowed in underground rivers. The air was sweet and perfect for breathing. When they first arrived, Veltar thought they had found paradise. That was before the Vorthak Empire decided they wanted this world for themselves. The Vorthak were everything the Kethani were not. They were big and strong, with thick armor covering their bodies. They carried massive weapons that could destroy buildings with single shots. Their ships were dark and ugly, built only for war. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who stood in their way. "Sir," called out Linara from the sensor station. Her voice shook with fear. "The enemy ships are moving closer. I think they are getting ready to attack again." Through the window, Veltar could see the Vorthak fleet hanging in the sky like black clouds. 7 massive warships surrounded their small colony. Each ship was 10 times bigger than anything the Kethani had ever built. Guns pointed down at them from every angle. 3 months ago, when the Vorthak first arrived, they had demanded the colony surrender immediately. When Veltar refused, they began their siege. They destroyed the spaceport first, making sure no one could escape. Then they knocked out the power plants, leaving the colony running on emergency backup systems. Finally, they took control of the orbital communication array, cutting off all contact with the outside galaxy, or so they thought. Quindal had been working in the deep mines when the attack started. Like all Kethani, he was clever with technology. In the lowest level of the mining complex, he found an old emergency transmitter that the Vorthak had missed. It was small and weak, barely powerful enough to reach the edge of their solar system. But it still worked. For weeks, they had been sending out distress calls. They broadcast their location, their situation, and their desperate need for help. The signals went out into the empty darkness of space, hoping that someone, somewhere, might hear them. No one ever answered. "Administrator," Quindal said quietly, "maybe we should consider the Vorthak offer. If we surrender, at least some of our people might live." Veltar knew what the young engineer meant. The Vorthak had made their terms clear. Surrender. And the Kethani would become slaves. They would work in the mines until they died. Their children would be taken away and raised as servants. Their culture, their language, their way of life would disappear forever. But they would be alive. "How many ships have answered our distress calls?" Veltar asked, though he already knew the answer. "None, sir," Linara replied softly. The galaxy was a big place, full of many different species, but most civilizations had learned to avoid the Vorthak Empire. Fighting them meant death. Even the powerful Galactic Council stayed away from Vorthak territory. It was easier to let them take what they wanted than to risk a war. The Kethani were alone. General Krexel, the Vorthak commander, had told them this many times. His ugly face appeared on their screens every day, laughing at their situation. He enjoyed watching them suffer. He had destroyed hundreds of colonies just like theirs. He knew that no one would come to help. "Sir," Quindal said, his voice barely a whisper, "I want to send one more message. Please." Veltar looked at the young engineer. Quindal had worked so hard to keep their hope alive. He had spent countless hours maintaining the transmitter, sending their calls for help into the void. Even when everyone else had given up, he kept trying. What would you say? Veltar asked. Quindal moved to the communication panel. His fingers danced across the controls, adjusting the signal strength. I would tell them who we are. I would tell them that we have families here, children, old people who cannot fight. I would tell them that we tried to live in peace, but evil came to our door. The young Kethani paused, looking out at the enemy ships. And I would tell them that even if we die, we hope someone will remember that we existed, that we mattered. Veltar felt tears forming in his large eyes. In all his years as colony administrator, he had never faced anything like this. He had built this place with his own hands. He had watched children take their first steps in the colony gardens. He had celebrated when young couples got married under the light of Zalara's twin moons. Now it would all be destroyed. Send the message, Quindal, he said finally. The young engineer nodded and began to speak into the transmitter. His words were simple but filled with emotion. He told their story to the empty galaxy. He described their world, their people, their desperate situation. He asked for help, but he did not expect an answer. When he finished, the control room fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the distant rumble of Vorthak engines above. Outside, the enemy ships began to move into attack formation. General Krexel had grown tired of waiting. Tomorrow, he would finish what he had started. The colony of Zalara Prime would fall, and another peaceful world would be added to the Vorthak Empire. But far away, in a distant part of the galaxy, Quindal's message was racing through space at the speed of light. It passed empty star systems and dead worlds. It crossed vast clouds of cosmic dust and navigated around black holes. And in a small listening post on the edge of human space, a young communications officer named Danny Martinez was just starting his night shift when an unusual signal appeared on his screen. Danny Martinez rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the screen again. The signal was weak but clear. Someone was asking for help. The message was not in any human language, but the computer had already started translating it. This is Colony Administrator Veltar of Zalara Prime, the translation read. We are under attack by the Vorthak Empire. Our people are dying. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need help. We have women and children here. We cannot fight. Please help us. Danny had been working at Listening Post 7 for 2 years. Most of the time, his job was boring. He listened to radio signals from distant stars, logged them in his computer, and filed reports that nobody ever read. But this message was different. This was someone calling for help. He immediately contacted his supervisor, Lieutenant Colonel Kate Phillips. Within minutes, she was standing behind his chair, reading the message herself. How far away is this Zalara Prime? She asked. Danny checked his star charts. About 40 light-years from here, ma'am, in the Outer Rim territories. And the Vorthak Empire? I've heard of them. Bad news. They take over planets and enslave the people living there. Most species just stay away from them. Lieutenant Colonel Phillips was quiet for a moment. She had joined the military to protect people, not to watch them die while she did nothing. Send this message to Earth immediately. Priority Alpha. Yes, ma'am. On Earth, the message reached Naval Command at 3 in the morning. Admiral Jake Morrison was awakened by an urgent call from his aide. Morrison was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his years as a young officer. He had fought in the border wars and the pirate conflicts. He knew what war looked like, but he also knew what peace looked like, and he was willing to fight to protect it. Morrison read the message 3 times before making his decision. He called his staff and told them to wake up everyone they needed. Within an hour, the command center was full of people working at their computers and talking on communication devices. What do we know about this Vorthak Empire? Morrison asked his intelligence officer, Major Steve Parker. They control about 30 star systems in the Outer Rim, Parker replied, showing a map on the main screen. They have a strong military but old technology. They use fear and brutality to control the territories they conquer. How many ships do they have? Intelligence estimates between 50 and 60 warships total, but they spread them out across their territory. Any single attack would probably involve no more than 10 or 12 ships. Morrison nodded. And how many ships do we have available for immediate deployment? Captain Lisa Brooks, his most trusted commander, stepped forward. I can have 7 ships ready to leave within 6 hours. The USS Liberty, USS Freedom, USS Constitution, USS Independence, and 3 destroyers. That's not a huge fleet, Morrison said. No, sir, but they're all new ships with the latest technology. Our weapons and shields are at least 20 years ahead of anything the Vorthak have. Morrison looked at the star map showing the location of Zalara Prime. It was far from Earth, in a part of the galaxy where humans had never traveled before. If they went there, they would be announcing to the entire galaxy that Earth was willing to fight for people they had never met. Sir, said Captain Brooks quietly, the message mentioned women and children. Morrison had children of his own, 2 daughters and a son, all grown up now with families of their own. He thought about them living in peace on Earth while somewhere else in the galaxy, other families were facing death. How long would it take us to reach Zalara Prime? He asked. At maximum hyperspace speed, about 36 hours, Brooks replied. And how long do you think this colony has left? Major Parker checked the intelligence reports. The message was sent 2 days ago. Based on Vorthak tactics, they probably don't have much time. Maybe days, maybe hours. Morrison made his decision. Captain Brooks, prepare your fleet for immediate departure. Full combat load. We leave in 4 hours. Sir, said Major Parker carefully, are we really going to war with the Vorthak Empire over a colony we've never heard of? Morrison looked around the room at his officers. These were good people who had dedicated their lives to protecting others. But this would be their first major action outside human space. They would be going into unknown territory to fight an enemy they had never faced before. Major, 20 years ago when the Zelthari pirates attacked the mining station at Alpha Centauri, did we ask if it was worth it? When the Corvin raiders hit our shipping lanes, did we wonder if we should get involved? No, sir. The only difference here is distance. These Cathani people are asking for help. They have families just like we do. They want to live in peace just like we do. If we can help them, then we should help them. Captain Brooks smiled. She had served under Morrison for 5 years, and this was exactly the kind of decision she expected from him. What are our rules of engagement, sir? Simple. Protect the colony. Stop the Vorthak attack. If they want to fight, we'll give them a fight they won't forget. If they want to leave, we'll let them go. But those people on Zalara Prime are under Earth's protection now. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Captain Brooks ran to her ship, the USS Liberty, and began preparing for departure. The Liberty was a heavy cruiser, brand new and packed with the most advanced weapons Earth had ever built. Its shields could stop almost any attack, and its guns could punch through the armor of any known warship. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark, the fleet's tactical officer, loaded the latest information about Vorthak ships and weapons into the combat computers. Chief Engineer Maria Santos made sure every engine and weapon system was working perfectly. The crew of each ship ran through their battle procedures, checking and rechecking every detail. In the ship's briefing room, Captain Brooks gathered her senior officers. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, in 30 hours we're going to drop out of hyperspace in an unknown star system. We'll probably be facing enemy ships that outnumber us. The people we're going to help have never seen a human before. They don't know if we're friends or enemies. She paused and looked around the room. But they asked for help. And we're going to give it to them. Questions? Lieutenant Commander Clark raised his hand. Ma'am, what if the Vorthak have already destroyed the colony by the time we get there? Then we make sure they regret it, Brooks replied simply. Chief Santos spoke up. Captain, are we sure our weapons will work against their ships? Our technology is newer and better than theirs. But in battle, technology isn't everything. Training, courage, and determination matter just as much, and I believe we have the best crew in the galaxy. As the meeting ended, Brooks walked to the bridge of the Liberty. Through the view screen, she could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and white jewel. It was beautiful and peaceful. Soon they would be far from home, fighting to protect people they had never met. But that was what being human meant. When someone called for help, you answered. All ships report ready for departure, announced the communications officer. Take us out, Brooks commanded. The 7 ships of Earth's fleet activated their hyperspace drives and disappeared into the darkness, racing toward a distant world where desperate people were waiting for a miracle they didn't think would ever come. General Krexel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devastator, watching the small colony below. His thick armor gleamed under the ship's lights, and his four arms moved restlessly as he planned the final attack. Today the siege would end. Today the Kethani would learn what happened to those who defied the Vorthak Empire. "All ships, prepare for planetary bombardment," he ordered into his communicator. His voice was deep and rough, like gravel falling down a metal pipe. On Zalara Prime, the warning alarms were screaming. Veltar ran through the corridors of the command center, trying to organize the evacuation. They had drilled for this moment many times, but now that it was really happening, everything seemed to move too slowly. "Get the children to the deep shelters," he shouted to his assistants. "Move the elderly to the underground tunnels. Hurry!" Quindal was still at his communication station, sending out their final distress call. His fingers shook as he typed the message. "This is Zalara Prime. The Vorthak are beginning their final attack. To anyone who receives this message, please remember us. Please remember that we tried to live in peace." Above them, the Vorthak ships moved into attack formation, their weapon systems charged with deadly energy. General Krexel smiled, showing his sharp teeth. In a few hours, this world would belong to the Empire, and its people would be slaves. But at that moment, something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to tear open near the edge of the solar system. Flashes of light appeared, growing brighter and brighter until 7 shapes emerged from hyperspace. They were ships, but unlike anything the Vorthak had ever seen, the human fleet had arrived. Captain Lisa Brooks stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, looking at the tactical display. The Vorthak ships were exactly where intelligence had predicted they would be, surrounding the planet in a standard siege formation. 7 enemy vessels confirmed, reported Lieutenant Commander Ryan. "Clark, they're big, but their technology looks old. I'm detecting energy signatures from at least 20 years ago." "Any sign of the colony?" Brooks asked. "Yes, ma'am. I'm picking up life signs on the planet's surface. Looks like the people are still alive, but the Vorthak ships are charging their weapons. They're about to begin bombardment." Brooks felt her heart rate increase. They had made it just in time. "All ships, battle stations," she announced on the fleet communication channel. "This is what we came here to do. Remember, we're here to protect innocent people. Show these Vorthak what human courage looks like." On the planet below, Veltar stared at his sensor screen in disbelief. "Quindal, are you seeing this?" The young engineer looked at his instruments and shook his head in wonder. 7 ships just appeared from nowhere. They're not Vorthak design. I've never seen anything like them. Could they be here to help us? I don't know, but they're moving toward the Vorthak fleet. General Krexel was also staring at his sensors, but his expression was angry rather than hopeful. "What are those?" "Ships? Where did they come from?" "Unknown design, General," replied his tactical officer. "They just dropped out of hyperspace. No identification signals." "Hail them," Krexel ordered. On the Liberty's bridge, the communications officer looked up. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the largest Vorthak ship. Put it on screen." "General." Krexel's ugly face appeared on the view screen. His 4 eyes glared at them with hatred and suspicion. "Unknown vessels, you are entering Vorthak territory. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed." Captain Brooks stepped forward so the Vorthak general could see her clearly. "This is Captain Lisa Brooks of the United Earth Fleet. We're here in response to a distress call from the colony on this planet." Krexel laughed, a sound like breaking metal. "Earth? I have never heard of this place. You are too late, human. This world belongs to the Vorthak Empire now. Leave immediately if you want to live." "I'm afraid I can't do that, General. The colony of Zalara Prime is now under Earth's protection. You need to withdraw your ships and leave this system." The Vorthak general's face turned darker with rage. In all his years of conquest, no one had ever spoken to him like this. "You have 7 small ships, human. I have 7 ships of war. You cannot stop me." Brooks smiled calmly. "General, you're about to learn something about humans. We don't measure our strength by the size of our ships. We measure it by the strength of our purpose." She made a cutting motion across her throat, and the communication ended. "All ships, spread out and prepare to engage," Brooks ordered. "Clark, what's our tactical situation?" "The Vorthak ships are turning to face us," Clark reported. They're bigger than our ships, but they're slow. Their weapons appear to be plasma-based, probably effective at close range. Their shields look strong but old-fashioned. Perfect. Santos, how are our engines? Chief Engineer Maria Santos called. From the engine room. All systems at 100%, Captain. We can give you whatever you need. Brooks looked around her bridge at her crew. These were good people, trained professionals who knew their jobs. But this would be their first real battle, and they were far from home. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced over the ship's intercom, 40 light years away from Earth, there's a colony full of families who are about to be murdered by bullies. They sent out a call for help and we answered. Today we show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people are threatened. On the planet below, the Cathani watched their screens in amazement. The strange new ships were moving to attack the Vorthak fleet. Someone had actually come to help them. Administrator, Quindal said quietly, should we try to contact the new ships? Before Veltar could answer, a new voice came over their communication system. It was speaking in perfect Cathani, language though with a strange accent. Zalara Prime Colony, this is Captain Lisa Brooks of the Earth ship Liberty. We received your distress call. We're here to help. Please stay in your shelters while we deal with the Vorthak ships. Veltar stared at the communicator in shock. After 3 months of silence, someone was finally talking to them. Someone who spoke their language and knew their situation. This is Colony Administrator Veltar, he replied. Thank you for coming. We didn't think anyone would answer our call. Sir, Brooks replied, when people ask for help, humans answer. That's what we do. General Krexel was not interested in talking anymore. He had spent 3 months surrounding this pathetic little colony, and he was not about to let 7 unknown ships ruin his victory. All ships, attack formation, he commanded. Destroy the human vessels. Show them the power of the Vorthak Empire. The 7 Vorthak warships began moving forward, their weapons charging for battle. They were massive vessels, built for intimidation, as much as destruction. Each one was 3 times larger than any human ship, but size was not everything. Enemy ships are advancing, Clark reported. They're moving into attack formation. All ships, implement Plan Alpha, Brooks ordered. Let's show them how humans fight. The human fleet suddenly burst into motion. Instead of meeting the Vorthak ships head-on, they spread out and began moving at incredible speed. The Liberty and Constitution went left, the Freedom and Independence went right, and the 3 destroyers went straight up. General Krexel watched in confusion as the human ships moved faster than he thought possible. What are they doing? Why are they spreading out like that? His tactical officer studied the sensors. I don't know, General. Their speed is much greater than we expected. It doesn't matter, Krexel growled. Concentrate fire on the largest ship. Destroy their leader first. But as the Vorthak weapons fired, the human ships were no longer where they had been a moment before. The Vorthak plasma beams cut through empty space, where the human ships had been just seconds before. General Krexel stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The human vessels were moving faster than his sensors could track them. Where did they go? He demanded. They're everywhere, General, his tactical officer replied, panic creeping into his voice. They're attacking from 3 different directions at once. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark smiled as he watched his plan unfold. On the Liberty's bridge, Captain, the Vorthak ships are trying to turn and face us, but they're too slow. Their formation is breaking apart. Excellent. All ships, begin attack run Alpha 7, Captain Brooks ordered. The USS Liberty dove toward the nearest Vorthak ship, the destroyer. Chief Engineer Maria Santos had pushed the engines past their normal limits, giving the Liberty speed that seemed impossible. The ship's weapons charged as they closed the distance. Firing main guns, announced the weapons. Officer Blue energy beams lanced out from the Liberty, striking the Vorthak ship's shields. The enemy vessel shook under the impact, its shields flaring bright yellow before starting to flicker. Direct hit, Clark reported. Their shields are down to 60%. Again, Brooks ordered. The Liberty fired a second volley, then immediately turned and accelerated away before the Vorthak ship could return fire. The enemy captain tried to follow, but the human ship was already gone, disappearing behind the planet. On the other side of the battle, the USS Constitution and USS Freedom were working together against another Vorthak ship. They came in from opposite directions, forcing the enemy to choose which one to shoot at. While the Vorthak ship fired at the Constitution, the Freedom hit it from behind, damaging its engines. General Krexel was getting angry. His ships were bigger and more heavily armed than the human vessels, but they couldn't seem to hit anything. The humans moved like fish swimming around sharks, striking quickly and then disappearing before his gunners could respond. "All ships, tight formation," he commanded. "Protect each other. Don't let them isolate us." But it was too late. The human ships had already separated his fleet. 2 of his vessels were trying to chase the fast human destroyers around the planet's moon. Another was limping away with damaged engines. His carefully planned attack formation had become a confused mess. On Zalara Prime, the Cathani watched the battle in amazement. Veltar could hardly believe what he was seeing on his sensors. "The human ships are so small," said Quindal. "But they're winning." "How is that possible?" asked Linara. Veltar studied the tactical display. He had watched many Vorthak battles over the years, and they always followed the same pattern. The Vorthak ships would line up and attack with overwhelming force, using their size and heavy weapons to destroy their enemies quickly. But the humans weren't fighting like that at all. They were fighting like a pack of wolves, working together to confuse and outmaneuver their larger opponents. They're using speed and coordination instead of size and power, Veltar realized. They're making the Vorthak advantages work against them. Back in space, General Krexel was learning the same lesson. His ship, the Devastator, was the largest and most powerful vessel in the Vorthak fleet. Its guns could destroy a city with a single shot. But those guns were useless if they couldn't hit their target. The Liberty appeared on his port side, fired a devastating attack, and vanished again before his gunners could even aim. His shields, which had protected him against dozens of enemy fleets, were already down to 30%. "Sir," called his communications officer, "the Ravager is requesting assistance. They've lost main power and are drifting." Krexel looked at his tactical screen. The human destroyers had surrounded one of his ships and were hitting it from all sides. Every time his ship tried to fire back, the humans would move just out of range, then attack again from a different angle. "Send the Punisher to assist," he ordered. But as soon as the Punisher moved to help, 2 more human ships appeared and began attacking it. The humans seemed to know exactly what he was going to do before he did it. On the Liberty's bridge, Commander Clark was indeed predicting the Vorthak moves with frightening accuracy. He had studied every report about Vorthak tactics, and he understood how they thought. "The big ship in the center is trying to reform his fleet," Clark told Captain Brooks. "He's going to pull back his damaged vessels and try to create a defensive formation. Can we stop him?" "Yes, ma'am. If we hit his flagship now while he's trying to coordinate the others, we can break his command structure." Brooks nodded. "All ships converge on the enemy flagship. Full attack." Chief Santos pushed the engines to maximum power. The Liberty, Constitution, and Freedom raced toward the Devastator from 3 different directions. The Vorthak ship was huge, but it was also slow and predictable. General Krexel saw them coming. "All weapons, fire at will. Destroy those ships." The Devastator's guns opened fire, filling space with deadly energy. But the human ships were already moving, twisting and turning in patterns that seemed impossible. The Liberty rolled to avoid. One plasma beam dove under another and came up firing. The human ship's weapons hit the Devastator's bridge shield's dead center. The impact shook the entire ship, throwing Krexel to the floor. Emergency lights flashed as systems failed all. Around him, shields down to 15%. His tactical officer reported. Before Krexel could respond, the Constitution and Freedom struck from the other sides. The combined attack overloaded the Devastator's shields completely, leaving the ship vulnerable. "Shields are down!" someone shouted. The Liberty came around for another attack, but Captain Brooks held her fire. Instead, she opened a communication channel to the Vorthak flagship. "General Krexel, this is Captain Brooks. Your ship is defenseless. Surrender now, and I'll let you leave this system alive." Krexel pulled himself back to his feet, blood running down his armored face. Around him, his bridge crew looked terrified. They had never seen their mighty fleet defeated so easily, but the general's pride would not let him surrender to these unknown humans. "Never!" he snarled. "The Vorthak Empire does not surrender to anyone." He reached for the self-destruct controls. If he could not win, he would at least take some of the human ships with him when his ship exploded. But Lieutenant Commander Clark had anticipated this too. Captain, the enemy flagship is charging its reactor for overload. He's going to try to ram us or self-destruct. Not on my watch, Brooks replied. Santos, prepare for emergency maneuver. Clark, target their reactor core. The Liberty spun around and fired a precise shot at the Devastator's engine section. The blast disrupted the overload sequence, saving both ships from destruction. General Krexel stared at his controls in shock. Even his attempt to die with honor had been stopped by these incredible humans. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, the remaining ships are requesting permission to retreat. Krexel looked at his tactical display. Of his 7 ships, 2 were severely damaged and drifting. 2 more had lost power and were defenseless. The others were surrounded by fast-moving human vessels that had already proven they could destroy them at will. In 30 minutes of battle, the mighty Vorthak fleet had been completely defeated. Captain Brooks appeared on his view screen again. General, your ships are beaten. Your men are frightened. You can keep fighting and watch them all die, or you can leave now and never come back. What's it going to be? For the first time in his long military career, General Krexel had no choice but to retreat. General Krexel stared at the tactical display one last time. His proud fleet was in ruins. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were now drifting helplessly in space, their crews begging for rescue. The humans had done in 30 minutes what no enemy had ever managed to do in his entire career. All ships, he said into his communicator, his voice heavy with defeat. Retreat to hyperspace. We are leaving this system. On the Liberty's bridge, Captain Brooks watched the Vorthak ships limping away. 3 of them had to be towed by the others, their engines completely destroyed. The mighty invasion fleet was now a broken collection of damaged vessels fleeing for their lives. Should we pursue them, Captain? Asked Lieutenant Commander Clark. Brooks shook her head. No, we came here to protect the colony, not to start a war. Let them go, but make sure they know they're not welcome back. She opened a communication channel to the retreating Vorthak ships. General Krexel, you and your forces are now banned from this system. If any Vorthak ship returns to Zalara Prime, Earth will consider it an act of war. Do you understand? I understand, Krexel replied bitterly. But this is not over, human. The Vorthak Empire will remember what happened here. Good, Brooks said simply. Make sure they remember it well. The Vorthak ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind only debris and the memory of their defeat. On Zalara Prime, the Cathani emerged from their shelters in disbelief. The siege was over. The Vorthak were gone. After 3 months of terror, they were finally free. Veltar stood in the colony's main square, looking up at the sky where the human ships were orbiting peacefully. Around him, his people were crying, with joy, hugging each other and celebrating their miraculous rescue. Administrator, said Quindale, running up to him with a huge smile on his face. The humans are asking permission to land. They want to make sure we're all right. Yes, Veltar said, wiping tears from his large eyes. Tell them they are welcome here. An hour later, Captain Brooks stepped out of a small landing craft in the colony's central plaza. She was followed by Admiral Morrison, who had arrived with reinforcements just as the battle ended. The Cathani gathered around them, curious about these strange beings who had saved their lives. Brooks was surprised by how much the Cathani looked like humans, despite their purple skin and large eyes. Children peeked out from behind their parents, staring at the visitors with wonder. Veltar approached them and bowed deeply in the traditional Cathani greeting. Captain Brooks, Admiral Morrison, I am Colony Administrator Veltar. On behalf of all the people of Zalara Prime, I thank you for saving our lives. Admiral Morrison returned the bow respectfully. Administrator Veltar, we're honored to meet you. We're just sorry it took us so long to get here. You came when we needed you most, Veltar replied. But I must ask, why? Why did humans travel so far to help people you had never met? Brooks and Morrison looked at each other. It was a fair question, and one they had been asked before by other species. Because it was the right thing to do, Morrison said simply. When people call for help, we answer. That's who we are. Quindale stepped forward, his young face full of curiosity. Are all humans like you? Do you always help strangers? We try to, Brooks replied. We believe that no one should face evil alone if we can help it. Over the next few days, the human fleet helped repair the damage done by the Vorthak siege. Human engineers worked alongside Cathani technicians to fix the power plants and communication systems. Human medical officers treated the wounded and sick. Chief Engineer Maria Santos was particularly impressed by Cathani technology. "Their mineral processing equipment is incredible," she told Captain Brooks. "They can extract rare metals from rock that we thought was worthless. And their planetary shields are very advanced," added Lieutenant Commander Clark. "If they had weapons to go with them, the Vorthak never could have threatened them." Admiral Morrison met with Veltar in the colony's council chamber to discuss the future. "Admiral," Veltar said, "we owe you our lives. How can we repay such a debt?" "You don't owe us anything," Morrison replied. "But if you want to help, we could use friends out here. The galaxy is a big place, and there are a lot of bullies like the Vorthak Empire." "What do you mean?" Morrison showed him a star map on his portable computer. "This is human space," he said, pointing to a small cluster of stars. "We're new to this part of the galaxy. We don't know much about the other species or the politics out here. But we've learned that there are people who need help and people who like to hurt others." Veltar studied the map thoughtfully. "You want us to be your allies? We want you to be our friends. Share information with us. Let us know if other colonies are threatened. Help us understand how this part of the galaxy works. And in return, Earth's protection. If anyone threatens Zalara Prime again, they'll have to deal with us." Veltar was quiet for a moment. The Cathani had always been peaceful, avoiding conflicts with other species. But the Vorthak attack had shown them that sometimes peace was not enough. "Yes," he said finally, "we would be honored to be friends with Earth." A week later, the human fleet prepared to leave. They left behind a small garrison of 20 volunteers who would help train the Cathani in basic defense and maintain a communication link with Earth. Quindal was among a group of young Cathani who had requested permission to travel to Earth to study human technology and culture. Captain Brooks had agreed to take them aboard the Constitution. As the ships prepared to depart, thousands of Cathani gathered in the plaza to say goodbye. They sang traditional songs of gratitude and waved, colorful banners in the air. Veltar stood with Admiral Morrison at the landing craft watching the celebration. "Admiral," he said, "before you arrived, we thought we were alone in the universe. We thought no one cared about us." "You were never alone," Morrison replied. "You just didn't know it yet." As the human ships rose into the sky, messages were already being transmitted across the galaxy. News of the battles spread from world to world, carried by traders and travelers. The Vorthak Empire had been defeated by an unknown species called humans. 7 small ships had destroyed a Vorthak fleet without losing a single vessel. The humans had then helped repair the colony they had rescued and asked for nothing in return. On dozens of worlds, oppressed people heard the story and began to hope. Maybe they were not alone either. Maybe someone would come to help them too. In the capital city of the Galactic Council, ancient leaders who had ruled for centuries began to take notice of this new species. Humans were clearly powerful, but they seemed to be motivated by different desires than most civilizations. They fought not for conquest or wealth, but to protect others. It was something the galaxy had not seen in a very long time. And in the depths of Vorthak space, General Krexel stood before the High Command, explaining how his mighty fleet had been defeated by 7 unknown ships. The Vorthak rulers listened in angry silence, already planning their response. The humans had announced themselves to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They had declared that they would protect the innocent and fight against oppression. Some species would welcome them as heroes. Others would see them as a threat to be eliminated. But across the stars, on worlds where families lived in fear of raiders and conquerors, people looked up at the night sky and whispered a new word they had learned: Earth. And for the first time in generations, they believed that help might actually come. The age of humanity in the galaxy had begun.